Mike was just trying to help a lost girl, but what he uncovered next shattered everything he thought he knew. You won't believe how his world turned upside down and how the truth finally came to light. Mike had always been the guy nobody noticed, and honestly, he preferred it that way. Working as a janitor in office buildings, he knew his place. Show up, do his job, and leave. Simple life. No questions, no problems. But that little girl, small, in a torn jacket, wandering the dark hallway, was something different. Like most people, Mike considered walking past, but something in her eyes stopped him. He could have kept going, just like always, do his thing, get it done, and be on his way. But there was something in her eyes, a mix of confusion and fear, small hands clutching a purse, like she was trying to hold on to something, anything. The way she was standing there, in the cold, it hit him. This wasn't just some kid wandering around, she was lost. And Mike wasn't the kind of guy to leave someone stranded. "Hey, you lost?" Mike called, his voice more cautious than he intended. The girl nodded, eyes wide with terror. "My mom. I can't find my mom." The weight of it hit him like a punch. Why the hell was she here alone? And where were the people who should be looking out for her? Mike took a deep breath and made his decision. "Don't worry, I'll help you find her." He didn't know why he felt compelled to do this, but something inside him snapped. This wasn't a job to clock in and out of. This was a moment that demanded action. But the moment he stepped into the hallway, things took a turn. "Mike," came the voice of his boss, Mr. Hunter, crackling through the radio. "What the hell are you doing? You're supposed to be cleaning. Get back on task." Mike's stomach twisted. He could hear Hunter's voice, sharp and annoyed, like Mike had done something horribly wrong. But Mike didn't care. Not this time. He couldn't just leave a kid alone like that. It wasn't the right thing to do. He kept searching, checked every office, every corner, every stairwell. He was going to find this kid's mom. But then he heard it. "Mike," Mr. Hunter's voice again. "What the hell are you doing? Get back to work. This is not your problem. You're not paid to play superhero." That was it. Mike's blood started to boil. He could feel his face getting hot, his fists clenching. He was trying to do something decent, something right. And here was his boss, tearing him down. This wasn't his job. He was just supposed to sweep the floors and do what he was told, no matter what. Mike felt his temper flare. "I'm not just going to stand by while this kid's out here scared and alone," he muttered to himself. He could feel the injustice settle in his gut like a stone. This wasn't just a bad day. This was the same kind of thing that made him hate his whole routine. The kind of thing that made him question why he bothered trying to do anything decent at all. Hunter didn't understand, and that made Mike angrier. He didn't understand what it meant to help, to actually care about something. And that was the problem. The world didn't give a damn. People just wanted you to fall in line and stay in your place. Mike didn't care anymore. "I'm doing the right thing, Hunter. Maybe for once, someone should do something good for a change," he muttered as he continued his search. But deep down, he knew. He knew that standing up for what's right was going to cost him. Mike had done everything he could. He searched every office, every hallway, doing his best to calm the frightened little girl, telling her it would be okay, even though he didn't believe it himself. He stayed with her until the police finally arrived. When they did, they acted like it was an inconvenience. Their questions were more about his actions than her safety. The way they looked at him, as if he had somehow messed things up, made his blood boil. But nothing could prepare him for what came next. The next morning, the headline hit him like a punch to the gut. "Missing girl, possible kidnapping." The words "possible kidnapping" flashed across his screen. His stomach twisted. How had this happened? He was just trying to help. Mike wasn't a hero, but he sure as hell wasn't the villain here. As the day dragged on, it became clear Mike had been caught in the middle of something much bigger than he could have ever imagined. The girl's mother was nowhere to be found, and now he was being questioned like he was involved in some crime. The pain hit him as the police asked more and more about his every step. He couldn't get the words kidnapping out of his head. The feeling of helplessness, the gut-wrenching realization that his attempt to do something good had spiraled into this mess, left him numb. Then came the call from his boss, Mr. Hunter. "You really messed up this time, Mike," Hunter said, his voice cold, devoid of any sympathy. "You're not a hero. You put everything at risk." Mike's chest tightened. This wasn't supposed to be his fault. He had tried to help a child, for crying out loud, but now it was his responsibility, his mess to clean up. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Guilt, confusion, and shame suffocated him, leaving him feeling smaller than ever before. Was it really his fault? Could he have done something differently? Mike walked out of the office, his mind spinning. Everything had changed in an instant. He had lost more than just his job. He had lost his sense of dignity, his confidence, everything he thought he knew about himself and the world. And for what? Mike's world, already cracked and bruised, took a wild turn when the truth came crashing in. He was sitting in his dingy apartment, staring at the walls, when a familiar name jumped out at him from a news story: the missing girl. Turns out, her father wasn't some random businessman. He was a big deal. A huge deal. Her father? The kind of guy Mike had no business crossing paths with. And yet, here he was, tangled up in a web of lies and dirty secrets. The girl? His daughter? Mike's brain was scrambling to put the pieces together. It hit him fast. He had been dragged into something far bigger than he could ever have imagined. Mike wasn't stupid. He knew something didn't add up. All the talk of kidnappings, the shady police interviews, the whispers about missing documents. It wasn't just some accident. The more he thought about it, the more he realized. Mr. Hunter, his boss, had a lot of unspoken connections. Connections that Mike had no idea about. That's when it clicked. Hunter had set him up. The kidnapping was a lie, a cover-up for something much darker. Mike felt his stomach drop. He had been played. His whole life had just been caught up in a scheme that wasn't about saving anyone. It was about hiding the truth. And now, Mike had a decision to make. He could keep his head down, play it safe, and just walk away. But that wasn't who he was. Not anymore. Mike wasn't going to sit quietly while the world buried the truth. Not after everything he'd already been through. He had to take action. So, he followed the trail. A random phone call here, a suspicious meeting there. The deeper he dug, the more he realized everything about this had been staged. This wasn't some random act of fate. It was a conspiracy to cover up Hunter's involvement in a bigger operation, a shady deal involving high-ranking officials, corruption, and worse. Mike felt his pulse quicken as the pieces started to fall into place. The pressure was unbearable, but he couldn't stop now. He was on the edge of something. He was getting closer, and for the first time in days, he felt a spark of hope. His actions could change everything. His life, his job, his reputation, everything had been shattered. But now, he was holding the pieces of a bigger truth, one that could expose the corruption buried deep beneath the surface. It wasn't just about saving the girl anymore. It was about saving himself. Mike had been digging for days, feeling the weight of every clue he uncovered. But when the truth finally hit him, it was like a punch to the gut. Hunter, his boss, wasn't just a bystander in this mess. He was the mastermind. The missing girl wasn't a random kidnapping. It was a carefully orchestrated plan to manipulate her wealthy parents' business. Mike felt the floor drop beneath him as he pieced it all together. Hunter had been playing both sides, working with powerful figures to cover up his illegal dealings. Mike had been a pawn in the game without even realizing it. But now, with the damning recording in his hands, Mike had the power to expose everything. He sent the evidence to the authorities and the press, knowing it would blow the lid off Hunter's scheme. The fallout was immediate. The police raided Hunter's offices, and the girl was returned safely to her family. But the real victory was seeing Hunter arrested, caught in the web of lies he had spun for so long. As if Mike hadn't already been through enough, the police showed up at his door. He braced for another round of questions, but instead they had news. "Mike, you did good. You saved that girl and brought down one of the biggest crooks in the city," an officer said. For the first time, Mike wasn't just the janitor. He was the guy who stood up when it mattered. The police chief shook Mike's hand later, gratitude in his eyes. "You're the kind of person we need more of." Mike felt a rush of pride, not because of the recognition, but because he knew he'd done the right thing. And the best part? It wasn't the praise. It was the realization that his own inner strength had carried him through. He wasn't just a small part of the system anymore. He had taken down corruption. Mike had finally found his courage, and in doing so, he had saved more than just the girl. He had saved himself.